positions, particles. There we go, and we'll OK that. And you can see it's done the same thing. It's produced a little red triangle here, and that indicates that there actually are some comments on that particular operator. So it's very useful. You can produce comments on, you know, the total event or on each operator if you want to. Plus, you know, you have the option of using this note operator here, and I'll just show you that. We drop that into the event. You can change the name of the note operator, and it produces a little window into which you can type comments. So there we go. You've got three choices really. You can use comments on events, you can use comments on operators, or you can use a specific operator itself called notes, and you can use that as a way of giving people guidance as to exactly what your particle flow does. Okay, so let's just get rid of those. Okay, let's look at the next feature. We can also click on an event, and this is quite a special feature, and we can look at its properties. Now each event is treated as basically as a max object, and you can see you've got the normal properties that you would expect to see on normal max objects in here. You can decide whether an event is renderable, but generally what the properties are used for is to control whether an event has any type of motion blur. So you might expect motion blur to be controlled in a global manner in particle flow, and you can actually do that by setting the properties on the global event up here, or any other of the global events, and that will then control the particle motion blur for all the events that flow from it. But you also have the other option of actually setting the motion blur settings per event. So you can see you can set up object motion blur, image motion blur, and what the multiplier might be for each type. So you've actually got much more control in that way. You can control the motion blur globally by using the properties of the global event. As I said, you can do it individually by changing the properties in each event. As you can imagine, any value that you set in here will override these because it's global, and therefore it takes precedence over the other events in its system. Okay, we've just got a couple more items to go, and then we'll be finished with the event view. One thing you'll notice is that wires come out of the left hand side of tests, and that could be restrictive. Effectively, you know, your particle flow is always going to be branching off towards the left. This doesn't have to be the case. You can actually, if you hold your mouse over the little box that comes out of the left side of the test, you can see that you've got a little left right hand arrow going on there, and that indicates that you can actually grab the output from the test and move it to another position. The only options are left or right, so we'll just grab that there, and oops, I've actually grabbed a wire there, so I don't really want to do that. I'll just grab that and I'll move that over there. There we go. And you can see now that it's actually moved the output of the test to the right hand side of the event. This is actually purely cosmetic. I mean, it just allows you to branch off to the right as well as off to the left. So it allows you to make better use of your space in the event view. And another useful feature is to actually be able to take the little nub from which the wires appear from and move that away from the box. So let's just try doing that. You can hold the mouse button over here, and you can see when I hold down it produces a white, you can see it's a little white box here. And now as I move around, you can see that the little nub is moved out, and you can see that the wire is appearing from it. So we'll just put it down here, let's say. And you can see now that the little nub has been moved out to here, and you can actually wire from this point outwards now, rather than from here. And that may not seem to be very useful, but it can be when you have multiple tests in one event. If I create a new age test here, and we'll move its output over here, and then I'll create a new event down here. What I'll do is I'll actually wire these two together. There we go. And you can see that the wire comes out and goes immediately down. Now if I do the same thing again with another test, we'll create another age test. We'll drop that in there. We'll just move its output over here, and I'll wire that to the same event. You can see that the wire comes out and goes immediately down and then blends with this wire, which isn't very clear. That's what this feature's for. It allows you to actually, you know, do what I just did, which is select here and have the wire appear from a different point in space. Do here, and then we have it from there. And this allows you to stop your wires from overlapping. You can see that, you know, your wires will appear from different points. So, you know, it can be a useful feature. It's not something you necessarily would want to use, but if your flow isn't very clear which way it's going, then you can use this feature to get rid of that problem. So we'll just get rid of these extra tests that we don't actually need, and we'll get rid of this event. And we'll move on to the next section, which is about right mouse button menus. Now, we've been using those up until now, and they're basically context sensitive, as they are usually within Macs. And we've been using most of the options that it offers. You've got options for turning on operators and tests, and for turning them off, for copying them, which we covered recently. And you've got options for deleting, renaming, and adding comments and so forth. Something we haven't actually had a look at yet are these two options here, which is to insert and to append. And as you can imagine by the names, what that allows you to do is to insert operators, tests, and miscellaneous, or to append them. So what happens is, if we select the speed operator here, and we'll insert an operator, a force, you can see it replaces it. That's not something that we want to do, so we'll just press Ctrl Z to get that back, do an undo. And if we select the event, and we do the same thing, we'll insert a force, it inserts it before any of the operators in the event. So you can see you've got different behaviors there based on whether you've got an operator selected or whether you've got an event selected. So we'll just get rid of that again. And if you do an append, and we append the same operator, force again, you can see it puts it at the end of the event. So again, we're getting different behaviors when we're appending. So we'll get rid of that. And we'll select this operator again. We'll go to append, force, and you can see it does the same thing. So basically append does the same thing no matter whether you've got operators selected or whether you've got an event selected. But as you saw, you got very different behaviors when you were working with insert, whether you had an operator or an event selected. So that's something to bear in mind as well. And why would you want to do add operators and tests using that system? Well, one of the options of particle flow is to in the particle view is to display certain elements of the graphical user interface. So you're always going to be using the event view, so you can't really get rid of that. But you can see you can actually toggle off the display of the depot, and you can toggle off the display of the parameters, and also the description. And that just leaves us with the event view, which is pretty stark. But basically, if you turn on the parameters, you can work within particle flow just using the parameter view, and by right-clicking and inserting operators and tests or appending them. So that's what that option is for. That's when it really comes into its own. So let's just turn on our elements again, so we get those back. Okay, so that's it for the event view. Let's move on to the next section, which is actually the menus up here. We'll see how those work with particle flow. Okay, let's try to run through these pretty quickly. If we look in the edit menu, you've got the option for creating new particle systems, an empty flow or a standard flow. This is the same as dragging these two presets out of the depot. And then below those you have events. You can create new events. You can create a birth event, an operating event, a test event, or a miscellaneous event. So as an example, if we create an operator event, basically that will create a new event, and it'll place whichever operator in it that we choose from here. So let's just choose a force, and there you go, it's created a new event and it's put a force in there. So yeah, very quickly you can create your operators and your events in that way. So we'll just delete that. Now the other option that we have is if we select an event, now append to becomes active, and now we can actually append an operator to the event or a test or miscellaneous. So let's append a force operator, and you can see it gets added to the end of the event. So that can be useful in circumstances. The other option that becomes available is when you select an actual operator within an event. And now if I go to here, you can see I've got insert before becomes active. And now I can insert an operator, and I'll choose force again, and you can see it gets inserted before the operator that I currently have selected. So I'll just delete that again. Now if we go down a little bit further, you can see we've got the option to turn off and turn on various elements of our scene. And if we use turn off all, you can see it's turned off everything in our scene. Actually at this point we'll switch to a different file which I prepared, which actually has quite a few more features in it which we can explore this with. So we'll just load up this example here. There we go. I'll just open up particle view again.